Robbie Lawler was out of control.
This is Double Cross, the murder of Robbie Lawler.
It was going to be an all-out war with him in the middle of it.
Crime World special investigation podcast based on my new book, Web of Betrayal, wherever you get your podcasts. I think we were probably seen as being very dramatic, very sensationalist, and laughed at when we suggested that the Kinahan organisation had deep links with the Russian regime. And amazingly, we have just had an embargoed press release from the NCA, which is the National Crime Agency in the UK, which investigates serious organised crime. And they have actually named the Kinahan network in this breaking news that they, under Operation Destabilize, have disrupted a Russian money laundering networks, which have been supporting serious and organised crime around the world.
And interestingly, they're also saying they're sort of saying this money is also being used to fund espionage by the Russian state, which we also said, and maybe some people did find it sounded a bit too James Bond-esque. But look, this is what has been come out today. The National Crime Agency described it as a multi-billion-dollar money laundering operation. UK gangs were struggling to launder money effectively.
Because they're making so much.
They're making so much, and the movement of money across borders has become such a huge issue in how they could manage it. Effectively, a Russian-speaking criminal network were offering to clean the money by transferring it, exchanging the cash for cryptocurrency, which would be based in Russia. So again, it seems to operate like the Hawala system, like another system that Eamon Dillon has spoken about a lot in this podcast, used in China. These things operate on the kind of honor system. So you hand the cash over to an individual, a Russian individual in the UK. He makes a phone call to somebody in Russia who tells the person, you now own these cryptocurrencies. There's literally no movement there's no money has never entered into any bank account. Then presumably the Russian network at some point managed to physically move that cash out of the country, and it's effectively untraceable.
The original cash would have to be turned into cryptocurrency, no?
Well, it's done by, I suppose, the honor system, but they make a phone call. You now own the crypto that's given to you.
Yeah, but you have to give them something to be.
Well, you give the physical cash to the Russians who are in the UK.
Yeah.
Okay, and then that becomes.
Where does that go?
Well, they get it out of the country because that at some point has to be used. But obviously, if they manage to get it to Russia, if they export it, which we've seen constantly in Ireland, and specialist hauliers moving money out of Ireland to the UK, that's their business. Yeah. So they get it back to Russia. And, obviously the implication is whatever you get to Russia, nobody's going to ask any questions. It just becomes foreign currency.
Only accept certain currencies?
Well, presumably it's sterling and dollars,
And euro?
Well, possibly, but this is the system, and it's a major operation by the
84 arrests and many already serving prison sentences, and they've seized over the 20 million. Now, this is cash sterling in cash and also the cryptocurrency. So that would have been one of those amounts that had been built up that presumably was ready for transfer into Russia or wherever else that cash was going. It's sort of very hard to get your head around a lot of it. I always visualise these huge big warehouses where, trucks are arriving with all this cash bundled up and it's been stacked up and up. How do you that on? Or
we've seen how they've done it. I mean, they vacuum packed the cash.
Yeah. But how do you spend that cash is what I mean. Like, how do you manipulate that around businesses?
Well, you don't. I mean, if you have a friendly bank that there's not restrictions on it, you deposit the cash into the bank in Russia. You get the cash to Russia. You put the money in the bank account. They ask no questions, and the money is just there in that person's bank account. In the meantime, the criminal in the UK has gotten access to cryptocurrency in a crypto wallet, as they call it, and there is no questions asked. So what you need is, if you got $500,000 in cash and went down to the Bank of Ireland and said, can I put this in my bank account? By the time you got out the door, the police would have been rung. That's the way it is.
Absolutely.
So if you get $500,000 and you deposit it in a friendly Russian bank, by the time you get out of the door, you're probably a bit less wealthy because a couple of people have got a taste of it, but the money is in the bank account. So
where comes in, and I'm going to actually ask Miles Johnson from the Financial Times to come on and explain some of this to us maybe later in the week, but where comes these sanctions from the US and the banking systems and
well, the
sanctions is a big hoo-ha about them every time they are made, but what effects are they having?
But the effects of that are that transfers between the Russian banking system and the West are effectively sanctioned. The movement of money from Western banks into Russia is effectively stopped. There's various other things about people doing business with Russia. But what happens is that Russia continues to have banks. They need foreign currency as a big benefit to them. They have a banking system where they do bank transfers. They have friendly countries.
They do,
major countries like China, of course, one of the second biggest economy in the world. So life goes on, but they're cut off from the West, and the movement of money between Russian banks and European and American banks, which was routine and happened every day. There's great restrictions on that. But Russia is still selling oil, for example, to many countries in the world. They get foreign currency in exchange, and that is held in their banks. They still need to have a banking system where they can lend out to the population in order to keep the economy running. But the addition of currency, is from abroad is of great benefit to the Russian state. So, I mean, what Rob Jones
talking about, by the way, this complex scheme, and this is the NCA. I'm directly quoting them, that they said that the this ability to swap cryptocurrency for cash provides a mutually beneficial service, streamlining the movement of cash generated by crime groups in the West, while simultaneously laundering crypto for cyber criminals and helping Russian oligarchs and elites to bypass those sanctions.
Yeah.
Now, the UK, they say, was a key hub, but I just want to come down to where the Kinahans are actually. And I mean, the Kinahan organisation is the only grouping that is mentioned in this press release from the National Crime Agency. Yeah, there is no other grouping mentioned in it.
Yeah.
So it says, as well as enabling UK-based criminals, Smart and TG, these were Smart and TG, were businesses that were at the heart of this criminal enterprise, right? So they used their global reach to launder money for transnational groups such as the Kinahans. And it says the notorious family-run crime syndicate responsible for trafficking drugs and firearms into the UK and around the world were sanctioned by the US in 2022.
Yeah. So what they also mention is that some of the ways in which they'd launder this cash, in particular, they were pushing some of it through legitimate businesses like construction firms in the UK with Russian ties, but they were also using mules to fly it in baggage to Dubai. So once it got to Dubai, presumably that cash would make its way into the banking system and then possibly make its way back to Russia. So it was
interesting, the dates they mentioned. So they are pointing out those sanctions which were enacted by the US in 2022. That was in April, from memory, of that year. But it says that from late 2022 to the summer of 2023, this is pinpointing those kind of, I suppose, 6 months. That this Smart network was used to fund Russian espionage operations. So they've undoubtedly actually identified which espionage operations that the money was pumped into.
Yeah, it's amazing because we did say this, you see, the Russians have a history of, because of the sanctions and the movement of money, the Russians are funding all sorts of operations across the world. Some of them involve paying people even for things like, troll farms and other operations, but they can't move money into the countries in which their agents are based. So this is a way in which it could happen. Again, you see the key role Dubai is playing in all of this, in that a lot of the money seems to have been moved to Dubai as a staging point. So we've seen constantly, I mean, I don't know if you've seen all these cases where people are being caught with 3-4 million flying into Dubai in suitcases with cash. There's been a number of these sort of influencers caught actually in various parts of the UK. And obviously then, again, we get the ties once the money gets to Dubai. The links between Dubai and Russia are free flowing. We've just spoken about that recently in separate podcasts about how the movement, we always talk about organised criminals in Dubai. There's a huge number of figures from Russia and a huge movement of money between Russia and Dubai that bypasses those sanctions. So you see the fact that the Kinahans are named. You also see you say as soon as the cash was confirmed as being passed to one of these couriers, the criminals get the equivalent in cryptocurrency provided by, they name 2 networks, Russian Smart and TGR networks. And they deposit the cryptocurrency in secret accounts, and that crypto then could be used to buy cocaine in bulk, according to the NCA, from South American cartels, which is incredible, really, because that's where the business is, I suppose, and the fact that cryptocurrency is being used to buy cocaine. The reality, of course, the reason why cryptocurrency is different than the normal movement of money is there's never any central banking location where it has to be stored. It's just moved around. There is no central hub at which the cryptocurrency. Yeah, so it's up in the ether,
I would say. Now, Rob Jones, the Director General of Operations of the National Crime Agency, says about this operation to stabilise that it has exposed this billion-dollar money laundering networks operating that in a way that was previously unknown to international law enforcement or regulators. And he says, for the first time, we've been able to map out a link between Russian elites, crypto-rich cyber criminals and drug gangs on the streets of the UK and the aforementioned Kinahans, which are given a shout out in this. And he says the thread that tied them together, the combined force of Smart and TGR, was invisible until now. So I'd say there's going to be a lot of excitement about this story. And
there's going to be a huge amount of excitement, and it's going to be it's something obviously we heard about. But I suppose the reality is, because of the relationship between the West and Russia now at this stage, that's one of the last safe havens for the Kinahans. And you can see also why people like the Kinahans are useful to the Russian state, who have been linked to drug trafficking gangs for many, many, many years. And it's, there's been loads and loads of operations, and we spoke about them before and even wrote about them, how they have a history of using money basically taken from drug gangs, funded by drug gangs, to fund these sort of secret disruption operations. Of course, always denied by the Russians, but it's absolutely fascinating. James Bond stuff again.
Absolutely. And actually there's 6 Russians named. I'm not going to try.
Yeah.
And they have now been sanctioned by the OFAC in the US. But one of them has previously been mentioned in November of 2023 by the Treasury, who designated virtual currency money launderer for Russian elites and cyber criminals. So in Washington, they had already, back in November, so this time last year, they said that they sanctioned Ekaterina Zdanova, a Russian national, for her role, so it's a woman at the top of it, in laundering and moving funds using virtual currency on behalf of Russian elites. The action is consistent with the commitment to crack down on sanctions. Okay, a key gateway to the international financial system for Russian elites and ransomware actors. So we've a lot to go over there, to try and work out who this individual is, who this Russian lady is linked to. We're obviously going to start looking for some photographs and try and link them all together and see if there's any connections that we can see as well with the Kinahans. But an amazing...
An amazing story. And even in one of the last lines, it says in 2023, the NCA said the scheme helped the state-controlled Russian Today media platform banned in the UK move cash into the country for one of its operations. So people might have seen Russian Today, some of the TV channel where they sort of pump out pro-Putin propaganda.
Yeah.
And we've had various Irish people appear on that platform. But according to the NCA, at least, that's part funded by the proceeds of drug crime.
Right, we'll definitely come back to this.
Yep.
I'm Nicola Tallant and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.